Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and we're back with another Total War Warhammer video. Today we're going to talk about the Dwarfs, a rather popular race which has been with us since Warhammer 1. They started off with 2 legendary lords as expected, and since then have received 2 FLC lords and 1 paid for legendary lord too. That brings the total to 5 legendary lords, which isn't too bad considering all the other races. Not only that, but they've had not only one, but a second rework too, and they've been brought in line to as close as possible to the races of Warhammer 2. While some people might say that the Dwarfs themselves are pretty much done in regards to the series, I think that they at least deserve one more DLC, especially in Warhammer 3, as we've got to look at it in a number of ways. First up, if we end up with a world map, or as close to a world map as possible, it would be nice to have a dwarf which could have a expeditionary force to go to different locations, very similar to how you can also get Forek in the Lustrian campaign and also in the Southlands. We also have to take into account that a Creative Assembly developer once said at the beginning of this promotion cycle for Warhammer 3 that the main thematic campaign map, not the big Mega Mortal Empires map, would be around 2 times the size of the Eye of the Vortex, which is absolutely massive and thus can fit a variety of different races and factions, which would be good to implement some Game 1 and Game 2 races through cross-game DLC. The Dwarfs themselves would have something quite cool for this, as you would be able to fight against the Chaos Dwarves when they eventually get implemented and the Forces of Chaos, which are known to try and attack Dwarven Carracks. Now, with all that being said, let's look at some possible characters and units that could actually be implemented for this. In regards to legendary lords, there are 2 possible characters, Grim Berlichson and of course Joseph Bugman, 2 very popular characters. Grim is a master engineer but has taken a more new age approach to the Engineers Guild than all the others, thinking more outside the box, focusing very heavily on trial and error, and trying to make the perfect machines and weaponry. It's actually very well known through his 2 main weapons, Grudge Raker, which is a twin-barrel shotgun, and the Cog Axe. He is a character that can easily be away from the Kara's Anchor, as a DLC could focus him around moving him towards the east in an effort to find precious metals and gems for his inventions. It's actually very simple enough. Then there's Joseph Bugman, a popular character and one of my personal favourite dwarfs. He doesn't really have a hold, and I don't know how he could be justified for a DLC character, possibly FLC, as he is mostly focused around hunting down greenskins. Now, I don't really think that we'll get a dwarf versus greenskin pack, as of course that makes no sense, so it could be that Bugman could be introduced as the FLC character, with Grim being the DLC paid for character, and Bugman could have an interesting playstyle. He could be a pseudo-horde, as his lore fits that very, very well. He's constantly moving, just hunting down orcs, and it could just be something completely different, as most dwarfs at the moment play very much the same. Well, in all honesty, they all play the same, so having a different playstyle would be kind of cool, as I'd still see Grim as a DLC character, still having the baseline generic dwarf playstyle. So these are pretty much 2 Lord characters that we can very much expect at the future if Creative Assembly want to expand on the dwarfs. Now, in terms of legendary heroes, I mean, there's Malachi Malkinson, which, you know, he's a Slayer engineer. He would have a similar feel to that of Grim, but a bit more vicious in a sense. I don't think he'd really fit with a Lord slot, so legendary hero could be really cool. It could be the case that Grim could be going out to save Malachi, or there could just be a generic quest for every single legendary lord to be able to go and save him, very similar to that of Lord Croak when it comes to the Lizardmen, which in truth could work rather well, as it would be nice if legendary heroes which were not tied to specific characters could be tied to the faction and race as a whole, as that would give you more incentive to go out and actually try and get them. Plus, you know, some characters themselves aren't really tied to specific factions, so yeah, this kind of makes sense. And finally, units. Okay, so the dwarf style of gameplay is actually very close to the lore and that of the tabletop. Most of the units available in the tabletop have also been implemented for Total War Warhammer, and it's one of those rosters which is almost actually fully complete. That being said, there are a few things that could be implemented to give some new type of playstyle to the dwarfs and just have a little bit of fun with it. So let's look at some stuff from the lore and previous editions which might be kind of cool. First, we had the Thunderbarge, which really doesn't need too much explanation. It's a giant floating airship with a lot of guns attached and can do a lot of damage. This could be something in the same way as the Dread Saurian is treated for the Lizardmen, where you can only recruit a certain amount given a building restriction, and you can increase it as you build more of these buildings, but you won't be able to have loads and loads of armies of it, instead one per army or just one massive doomstack. These would be incredibly durable and would do a lot of damage. You'd also be able to take advantage of the fact of maybe having an engineer refilling its ammo too, so it should be the top tier unit for the dwarf. The only thing is, of course, as I said, there are a very limited amount of them and you wouldn't be able to spam them, so don't expect to just dominate the battlefield constantly. Of course, it being a flying ship too means that you'll have to bring some other stuff around with it because, you know, you can't have a full flying army or else you automatically lose. So it kind of balances it out. Rune Golems were always mentioned in lore, but I don't believe they ever had a tabletop mini. It could be kind of interesting to have something very, very big, kind of like a dwarf version of the Rogue Idol, but of course metal. But the thing is, of course, you have to take into account that the dwarf roster itself is primarily focused around shooting and defensive lines. You wouldn't really use a Rune Golem for defensive measures. You would take it up there and do as much damage as possible, but that would mean that it would be left alone. It could be cool, as I do love the concept idea of it, and it could be very durable. It could be one of those things that you just put on top of a bridge, choke point and stuff like that, just to hold the enemy down whilst you fire at them. But given dwarf playstyle, it's so very different. I'm not saying Creative Assembly can't do it, it's just it might have to be switched around, possibly attach a few guns to it too. Nothing too powerful, of course, because that would be absolutely ridiculous, but a few shots here and there could make it rather interesting, kind of like a Necrofex Colossus, but not with a cannon, of course. Just something short range to be able to do some fire and then get into the brunt of the melee combat. Yeah, something like that might be interesting. On the tabletop, the dwarfs also had access to a weapons team known as the Steam Drill, which is very similar to that of the Skaven Warp Grinder. In fact, it's very likely that the Skaven learned how to do this from the dwarfs by stealing their tech. The Steam Drill itself is nothing too special, but it is kind of cool in a sense. It'd be able to do a bit of damage, be pretty decent in melee combat, as miners already are, but what this could actually do is add in another unit which could then destroy possibly gates, walls. Walls would be a bit of a stretch, but you never know in the future with Warhammer 300 Siege rework, but it could be something that would bring the ability to be able to start breaking down gates and thus have the siege attacker trait on different armies very early into your campaign. I think some people would quite like that, as the miners themselves are a low tier unit, and yeah, they're still pretty good for dwarves. Now imagine them being able to knock down gates at a much faster rate. Now yes, miners are already able to do that, but this would be a extremely faster rate. Just think about the Skaven weapons team itself, the Warp Grinder, and just put dwarfs there instead. It's got some benefits. It wouldn't be 100% like needed, and later on in your campaign they would be kind of useless, but it would be cool to have another miner unit which would just have something special and it would have its own different playstyle. Plus, if you want to have like a themed miner army, you can, as now you have some sort of weapon team. It really depends on what Creative Assembly want to go for this, but I kind of like the idea. For the last unit, there could be the Goblin Hero, which was something quite popular back in the day and never really got expanded upon in later editions, but this is a basic anti-infantry blender unit, very similar to that of the Doomflayer, bit slower though, but able to do a lot of damage. And well, if you want a more aggressive frontline, well, you know, this does look kind of like it will do a lot of damage to anything in the front line. Plus, it's super cool in how it looks. The miniature itself, I've got one, and it's just really one of those centerpiece models. It could be cool to have something like this to try and bring something new. It's still a mechanism, it's still a war machine, and it just fits with the theme, especially if a Slayer legendary hero hero like Malachi gets added in, as that could be a way to be able to recruit them. Maybe a special mechanic like Troy has, where once you get the legendary hero, you'll get this as a special legendary unit. You can keep recruiting them, however, they'll just be fairly expensive. Really, in terms of missing units, that's pretty much all that's missing, and I wouldn't say that there's much else left. Some Lord and Hero options could be nice. A Slayer Lord and Slayer Hero could be cool, once again attached to Malachi, so if you recruit him then you get access to them or something like that, with Ungrim Iron Fist already getting access to them naturally because, you know, Slayer King. And maybe a Lord variant of the Master Engineer. We've already got that as a hero, but if we're getting Grim Burluxon as a character in the future, then this would work rather well. Call it just a Guild Engineer and that's pretty much sorted, or a Guild Master, that works even better, and then you've pretty much got everything that's missing. In fact, the Dwarfs don't really need that much. They've pretty much sorted, as I've said before, but these things just adds in the little bits that are missing, and then I guess the Dwarfs are pretty much done. There are some more missing characters, but I don't think anything else would be warranted for a DLC pack, unless of course Old World miniatures do link up to Total War Warhammer, which would make sense, or if Creative Assembly just decide to do character packs, which is something that we really need. Some of the races and factions are pretty much done, but just selling a character by himself, possibly attached to a legendary hero too, well, that would pretty much fill out the roster in terms of playable legendary lords. But what do you guys think about this? It's just something I've been thinking about lately, because the Dwarf rework kind of fixed some issues, but it didn't really add in everything that we were hoping for. We were expecting some new units and so on, and it's just something that I guess we will see in Warhammer 3, but it's likely to take a while because they're probably going to do the whole basic game 3 versus game 3, and then probably game 3 versus game 1, and then game 2. It's going to be a random thing. I just hope it's something themed and not just like a random dice roll, because recent DLC just seemed like that. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'm rather curious to see what you guys think about the missing units and the possible legendary characters, and let's start a bit of a discussion. But with that, my friends, we've come to the end of our video. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, might I suggest giving the video a like, or even subscribing to the channel, as it really does help us out. In the description section below are various links to different social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, and Discord. Also in the description section is an affiliate link with Element Games, where you could buy loads of hobby-based products, not just Warhammer, for 10 to 25% off. Making a purchase using that link and also our special code, which is also in the description, supports the channel at no extra cost to you, which we think is rather cool. A big thank you to our patrons. Your support means the world to us. It's amazing that people want to help a small channel like us grow and get to a higher level of content. A big thank you to Gibraltar LUSC, Ryan Bertsche, Andrew Prince, and Okro for subscribing to us at our Fane level. You guys are super cool. And a big thank you to Edward Yule, VS Vasan, Aaron Whitman, and Shaggy for subscribing to us at our King level. Honestly, we can't thank you all enough. And lastly, a big thank you to all of you for liking, sharing, and commenting on these videos. Honestly, it's because of you guys that the channel's been growing at such a great pace lately, so we can't thank you all enough. But with that, my friends, thank you so much for watching once again, and we shall see you all again very, very soon. Have a good day.